Well, we can go ahead and get started. I think people are going to continue to be showing up here over the next few minutes, I would imagine. But looks like we've got some activity in the chat function as well. So good to see that conversation there. I hope everyone is doing well. Just wanted to make a quick introduction. I'm Brian Holloway, and I'm the Vice Chair of the International Business Society of TAG. Just wanted to welcome everyone to the event today. Certainly look forward to the discussion. Just a couple of pieces of information here before we get started. Just a little bit about TAG, or the Technology Association of Georgia. For those of you that are not aware, TAG is Georgia's largest technology association with over 30,000 members in the association. TAG also has 20 professional societies, including the International Business Society, which the society that's sponsoring this event is. And so a little bit about the International Business Society. Our society typically has events like this throughout the year where we bring the international technology and the Georgia technology communities together on a regular basis. This is our first event for 2022, and we've got several more events scheduled throughout the year. We've got a trends in media and advertising event that's coming up in a couple months. We've got our signature event, Where Georgia Leads, coming up in September. We have an esports event, kind of a global esports event coming up in November, and 3 other events kind of in the works. But certainly want to encourage everyone to go to our society's page on TAG's website, which is tagonline.org. So you can find out more information about our upcoming events that we have coming up throughout the year. Also wanted to highlight the 3 sponsors for today's event. That's UPS, Fraser and Dieter, and Morgan Stanley. So we're certainly appreciative of our sponsors for the event. And last of all, just wanted to thank all the panelists and speakers that'll be introducing themselves shortly. So thank you all for being involved in today's event as well. We certainly look forward to hearing some great insights from supply chain leaders based here in Georgia that have ties across the international community as well. And certainly a timely event, just given the current environment that we're in now. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started here. We ask that you all keep your devices muted unless you're asking a question. We're going to be opening it up to some Q&A during the session, and certainly on the back end of the session. So we certainly want everyone to ask any questions that you have, and don't hesitate to ask those. We do have a chat function as well, so feel free to use that, take advantage of that, and ask any questions during the session. So we'll certainly be monitoring those. So I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to today's moderator, Kelly Brock, who's the VP of International Marketing at UPS. Kelly also happens to be our former chair of the society, of the IBS Society. So Kelly, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, and then we'll let our panelists introduce themselves as well.
All right, thank you so much, Brian. Good to be back here with the TAG International Business team and working with all of you again. So really excited about this afternoon and the time we're going to spend together talking about supply chain disruptions and impacts. Really, these things are impacting our lives personally and professionally with what we've seen going on with the pandemic. So we'd like to make this live and engaging. We're going to kick it off with some questions for each of the panelists. But then, of course, we will open it up for questions and answers from the audience. So we welcome you sending your questions via chat or raising your hand as we go throughout the time we spend together today. So just a little bit about myself. Brian mentioned I work at UPS. love to see a raise of your hands if you've received a package from UPS. I'm hoping I get 100% participation here in this survey or poll. So hopefully you're familiar with our company and you know what we do, and you've either shipped or received a package with us. Thank you for your business, by the way. UPS has literally led me around the world. They've given me a fantastic opportunity to work in many locations, primarily focused on the international side of the business. I have broad experience in revenue enablement, business planning, customer experience, and just international strategy as well. Worked here in the US, in Atlanta and Boston, but also in Asia, in both Singapore and Hong Kong. Just some fun facts about myself, some interesting things. Because of my time living and working abroad, I love to travel. So always trying to get another stamp in my passport every year, although I haven't done as much of that recently. Love watching HGTV. I have an old bungalow home built in 1935, so there's always some improvement that I need to do. And I love when I hear other people introduce themselves. They always say great things like I've run marathons, I'm a yoga instructor. I wish I could tell you that I've done those things, but I'm more of a guilty pleasure, like to eat Cheetos and salty type of person. And as I mentioned, I've lived and worked abroad with UPS and lived in Asia for 5 years. So that's a little bit about me. Now I'd love to introduce our other panel speakers this afternoon. So let me kick it off with Aaron Henry. And Aaron is a COO of a high-tech company. And Aaron, would love to hear a little bit more about yourself. Would you mind introducing yourself to the audience today, please?
Sure. Thank you, Kelly. First time actually participating in one of these events, and I'm really interested to kind of hear more about the TAG Association when we're all done with this. But yeah, I work for a company called Murrelektronik. We are a manufacturer of automation components that are used really in machine production, logistics, automation in the interlogistics field. So all the conveyor packaging, sorting, and all the things that are happening within UPS probably have our products on your conveyor lines. Yeah, we do manufacturing all across the world. We have several locations of manufacturing that we do in Europe, as well as in China and here in the US in the Atlanta area. I've been with the company now for just about, I think I'm a couple of days shy now of 14 years. And I've been in this industry for about 30 years. And this has certainly been an unusual last two, probably the most unusual 2 years in a row that I've ever seen in business, for sure. And I'm sure everyone has the same experience in that in different ways. Yeah, I did my undergrad with University of Georgia. I did my master's with Texas A&M. And as you can see, in the fun facts down there, I do love muscle cars. I've got an old Mustang that I've rebuilt a couple times now, actually. And I enjoy a lot of traveling, obviously. I like to go to Germany and France and a couple of different places. I usually spend 1 or 2 weeks in the summer as a fishing guide in Alaska, where I go up there and I'll go fly fishing for a couple of weeks, take a few people with me, and we'll teach them how to fly fish and run from bears.
Very interesting, Aaron. Great to meet you today. And I also see you have 2 children at Georgia Tech. I'm a fellow Yellow Jacket. Go Jackets.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've got one who just graduated and one who's on her way out. So she needs a job, if anybody's interested. Very talented environmental engineering person coming out of school.
All right, good to know. Great to let the audience know so we can make a connection there.
She cannot come home. That's the trick.
All right. Well, thank you, Aaron. So now I'd like to introduce Elliott, or have Elliott Page introduce himself. Elliott, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm Elliott Page. I'm the Director of Air Service Development at Harsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. That means I'm responsible for basically business development, making sure that Atlanta is connected to more cities, both domestically and internationally, both on the cargo and the passenger side. So that's a pretty big job sometimes, sometimes pretty interesting, very interesting. So it means that I travel a lot. It means that I travel to various faraway countries, and often have to get involved with a lot of other cultures. I am originally Antiguan. That's the lovely southern, more deeper southern accent than the southern accent that's here. I've been here 7 years, and used to live in Asia, Kelly. I used to live in Geneva, Switzerland. Also lived in the Dominican Republic. I'm from Antigua. Lived in New York, Florida, and now Atlanta. And I speak 3 languages, French and Spanish, because I lived in Santo Domingo. Fun facts, I love cross-country skiing. When I lived in Geneva, I used to go cross-country skiing with a lot of my friends. I realized I love it a lot more than downhill skiing. It's a lot safer. When you fall, which I often did, it doesn't hurt as much. And but I also like, what's not there is I love cooking and baking and just, spending time with family and friends. I love cooking for people. And just having conversation over food. So those are some of my favorite things to do.
Well, Elliott, I bet you have some great stories about all of your travels and your life in living in many countries. So you definitely have me beat on the international travels and living abroad. So yes, very exciting to hear that background. Thank you, Elliott.
Thank you.
And last but not least, I'd love to introduce a fellow UPSer. So on Team UPS with me, Abhishek Gupta. Abhishek, welcome, and please introduce yourself.
All right, Kelly and Tag, thanks for having me on this panel discussion today. Really appreciate the opportunity. Again, my name is Abhishek Gupta. I've been with UPS 12 years or so, still a little baby in the UPS terms of service here with UPS. I've been in US for a long time, came in here for my master's, and then started in R&D, gradually moved into product development, and then finally ended up with UPS in marketing. So have done a bunch of things. I'm excited that we all have some international flavor. I currently work in international marketing. I'm originally from India. So kind of connectivity a little bit between some of the panelists in there. In my current role, I'm responsible for air and ocean freight marketing, very interesting times for both of them. And I used to hear in the past that if one does well, the other doesn't, but somehow surprisingly, as soon as I got it, both of them started to do very crazily. So it's interesting and fun for me to be here in this environment the last 2 years or so. We'll talk more about that as we get along. But a little bit fun fact about me, obviously being international and loves traveling a few different languages. But the best part is just to spend time with my kids. I mean, I think challenging sometimes to raise them into 2 different environments, right? Culturally being Indian and then raising them in an American environment. It's always entertaining and fun to interact with them that way. And then obviously being Indian, love to cook spicy food, entertain people with spicy food, and then engage and go with friends to eat spicy food. So food definitely is a center of attraction for anyone Indian. So that's definitely me. And then looking forward to the discussion, Kelly. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I know who to come to when I want to try some spicy Indian food. So we'll have to get together. All right. Well, thanks everyone, and welcome. Welcome to all our attendees today and to our speakers that we have for the panel today. And let's kick it off with our first question. And I'd love to ask Abhishek, as a fellow UPSer, the first question for the day here. So the pandemic has really changed the way we all do business, and we've seen a significant increase in our UPS e-commerce business. What have you seen UPS do, and what have we done to respond to this changing environment driven by the pandemic and shifting supply chains?
Yeah, so very good question. I think I'll just put it in like 3 different buckets. I think the first and foremost, when pandemic started to hit, obviously people are a little bit unsure about what's happening, but then realized over the time frame that capacity and having access to capacity, because the whole passenger flights were kind of put on hold, was becoming a key priority for everyone, having enough capacity in the marketplace. So I think UPS has the flexibility, being in a unique position of having its own airline, as well as a relationship with the common carriers from a forwarding functionality, to be able to adapt that, pivot quickly with that marketplace setting, and then provide and procure capacity, either its own capacity or through the carriers internationally on a global scale, as well as when needed, having the ability to charter independently within airlines to make sure that on certain specific lanes, primarily APAC to US, it can actually service the customer's need and suit accordingly. So I think that was definitely a couple of months of juggling the pieces together to make sure that we have and we can maintain that capacity that is absolutely required by customers to service and move goods globally from one point to another part of it. The other one, I think people are very familiar with it, are solutions. I mean, UPS being a very global entity and having the capability to serve customers from end to end, have a multitude of solutions which sometimes customers don't use proactively. So hybrid solutions between air and ocean, sometimes a combination of a small package services combined with forwarding services, where customers can actually use these to pivot in moments like COVID, where there's so much complexity of the supply chain, so much change and flux in the supply chain. Sometimes what we need to do and what we have helped customers is pivot to that. So examples would be things like, air and sea. I mean, a lot of customers plan their supply chains upfront. They do a good planning, and then when they have to move on a random scale like COVID, then it becomes difficult. But having those solutions definitely has helped a lot of UPS customers by adopting things like PLCL, I mean, less than container load services, where they can't get the containers that they want. They can pivot to it. When they want to go directly to the consumers by bypassing the distribution centers, they can use UPS deferred products, including Trade Direct, which move directly to customers, all inclusive. So those kind of solutions have definitely helped e-commerce customers satisfy the needs, be flexible with some of the solutions, and keep their supply chains moving. And I think one final thing I would say is that UPS has been a little bit, ahead of the curve from the COVID perspective, that we were working on our digital access program even before the COVID hit. So we wanted to meet our customers, especially e-commerce customers, where they were. And they were in all these digital channels and platforms like Shopify, right? Like Facebook, social places which were getting into marketplaces. So we were there and we were able to actually serve and offer our customers these shipping solutions, these fulfillment solutions where they were shopping and being active on. So I think that has helped UPS and as well as its customer by us being there in these digital platforms very actively, especially for the e-commerce customer. So those would be a couple of the points that I would highlight, Kelly, here, that how UPS has engaged the e-commerce customers.
So really interesting, Abhishek, and I know you work primarily on the air freight and the ocean freight side of the business, and you were talking about less than container load. And really what I'm hearing from you, if I had to summarize maybe what you said from my perspective, is that we were able to flex up and flex down based on this surging demand and need driven by the growth in e-commerce because we had multiple channels. And then we were also able to pivot digitally and really kind of work with small, medium-sized businesses as well as large customers to meet them where they wanted to be in this space. So we had to sharpen our digital pencils and then also be agile and nimble to adjust our network to handle the rise in the need and the demand. So really, really interesting to hear from you on that. And you talked a little bit about passenger aircraft and capacity. So I think that's a great segue really into to hearing from Elliott Page directly. Elliott, you talked about what you're responsible for and kind of on the business development side, but both commercial and passenger aircraft. So I can't even imagine what you've been going through these past 2 years. It must be a complete roller coaster ride. So tell us about that and how these different capacity levels, what you've seen, when do you think things will maybe return back to normal, if that's even the case?
Yeah. We always say that let's return to normal, and we're not even sure what that means anymore. We had two very different scenarios happening, and I guess I saw it because I was watching both passenger and cargo. On the passenger side, first of all, of course, as everyone knows, we lost. No one would travel because of travel restrictions, and so we saw travel plummet. I think in the end, last year, our travel is back at about 60, almost 70% of what it was in 2019, which is not bad. and we're very happy for that. But but luckily it's trending upwards. As we see, Omicron kind of created a little bit more dent in that trending upwards. But generally, over the long term, we see that more and more people are traveling. Most of the travelers are VFR, visiting friends and family, and also a lot more tourism. But business travel is still not back to where it was, and that's something that we really hope will come back soon. Atlanta is a convention city. We're a conference city. We are accustomed to big crowds coming to the city, and we don't see a lot of that as much as we used to. So we're really hoping that will happen soon. So generally on the passenger side, there is a trend upwards. There's an increase in the load factors, meaning the amount of passengers per plane is also increasing. So airlines are doing better than they did before. There are some challenges in terms of staffing for some airlines, especially on the passenger side, because many staff many teams get COVID and they can't work. So there's a staff shortage for many companies. And it's caused an impact on some frequency, not a lot. I mean, I can think of one airline, which, I wouldn't call their names, but out of 90 plus flights per day, they reduced it by 3 just because of staff shortages. So it's something that's impacting globally, in fact. And it's a bigger challenge in passenger more so than cargo. On the cargo side, and I think Gupta alluded to this, is that we've been, we've had so much cargo that it's hard to keep up. Because everyone's home, ordering online, getting accustomed to the idea of e-commerce, and e-commerce has really made the penetration we've seen about five plus years growth in 1 year, just in 2020. So in 2 years, we're doing maybe 10 years growth in the growth we expected in e-commerce. So we've seen a lot more cargo planes coming to the airport, a lot more cargo in general. We've broken our own record. So last year we had 731,000 metric tons, which is probably too much, a little bit more than we can handle. So we are building new facilities to handle more cargo, but that will take time to, it doesn't happen overnight. So we are trying some technologies and stuff, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But on the cargo side, we're happy for the growth. It's a good problem to have. We've been working with our ground handlers with a variety of things, like helping them to get new staff through a lot of job fairs, a lot of practical things to kind of get people to get them to work. We have a variety of safety measures. We're all required to wear a mask at work and have all the different protocols, because as an airport, we never closed during COVID. We continue to operate, and up to today, we've never stopped operations at this airport. So we recognize that cargo especially has been the hero during this time. This is how we moved a lot of PPE. This is how we moved a lot of perishables that people need to eat and all of that stuff, just by making sure cargo continue to function. And it's tough, but I always consider that cargo, especially, these are the heroes of COVID. Yeah.
Really interesting, Elliott, to hear your journey and the dip in passenger, but the surge in cargo. So, it's obviously that's a huge challenge, and you and your team navigated it beautifully based on what you're saying. You were able to flex up, flex down, and deliver PPE and stay open amid many challenges in the supply chain, as well as with staffing. So thank you for all that you do. I know probably anyone who's traveled and needed to get somewhere urgently during this pandemic time is grateful for what you and your team and everyone else at the Atlanta airport has done to support that. So thank you. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't talk to Aaron about what he's been experiencing at his company, Murrelektronik, amongst this supply chain and pandemic situation. There has to be disruptions and critical components or parts or challenges you faced, Aaron, amid all of these changes. We know there's a surge in demand in, the supply chain, particularly for movement of goods between 2 points, and seeing that surge driven by the e-commerce situation. So please, Aaron, talk to us about what you've experienced during this time.
Yeah, we've really had some really unprecedented issues that we've never even considered having to deal with before. Just speaking about our US operations, we get about 50% of our finished goods and raw materials from overseas, whether it be Europe or China, it doesn't really matter. And, when COVID started, it was okay. Certainly the initial disruption to air shipments was felt, and then you could quickly tell when commercial airliners were pivoting to hold more freight versus people. So that certainly helped, and that really kept things moving along. But then it didn't take long and we had shipping disruptions. And so we get a lot of stuff air freight. We get a lot of stuff in ocean containers. And all of a sudden this shipping container problem kind of popped up. And that was truly unexpected because that's where we get a lot of our bulk raw materials. And we make a lot of cable. So cable's heavy and you don't want to fly cable, right? And especially when you're using, 35,000 miles of cable in the US or something like that we use, that's a lot of heavy weight to fly around. Really want that on a ship. But then it happened, you couldn't get parts, you couldn't get raw materials, and you're forced to get into the airlines again, but the airlines were full and everybody's competing for space for a finite amount of room. And, shipping rates were increasing. And as they increased, it really didn't help the situation because it was, if you're big, you pay, if you're small, you wait. And that's okay. But there was no alternative. The shipping containers were all full. There's no more room on ships. And so really we're all kind of left to either wait or start to source domestically. So we ended up having to quickly qualify a lot of domestic manufacturers. And that was great. It was working really well for the first year of COVID. And then, oh my goodness, everybody started shopping. And when they all started shopping at home, our business went through the roof in terms of, the large box movers and retailers were all building new logistics centers and interlogistics centers. And, the amount of freight being put into the system and the demands on new boxes to ship anything went crazy. And so our demand for automation components also just went through the roof. And that happened globally with all of our competitors and everybody around us. That happened absolutely to everybody. But what was really strange is that because COVID took so many people out of the workforce, it took all of the inventory supplies away. There was no more buffer inventory for anybody to have. And now we're dealing with truly finite amount of capacity in manufacturing. And we can't ramp up fast enough with new equipment, new machinery, because there's really just so much demand. You're waiting in line for stuff that you should have ordered 3 years ago in terms of new production lines and things like this. And so now we're all kind of waiting for stuff to arrive. We're all having to deal with truly finite numbers. If you know what you need, you better order it because that's it. If a chip producer can only make 100,000 pieces of a chip, that's it. That's their capacity. There's no more. And so now you're talking about orders that are going into 2023 and 2024. And how do you deal with this, trying to grow a business, but you're kind of limited by true capacity. And so it's really creating a whole new level of challenges, whether it's raw components or shipping or freight or whatever. And we use almost every mode of freight you can imagine, except for trains. And I think, maybe they're next.
Aaron, that's fascinating. I think we all, read articles, we hear about the challenges, but listening to what you've actually experienced. At first, it sounds like it was a shipping issue with ocean freight and carriers, and then it really became components and parts and everything else that created challenges. And now it's creating these long wait times or lead times, and you must really plan years ahead, it sounds like, for some of these in-demand components that are in scarce scarce supply right now. So yeah, that's extremely challenging. So really impactful story, Aaron. I'm sure you've had a lot of early mornings and late nights dealing with all of these fluctuations.
Yeah, it's been interesting.
All right, so I think we've heard a little bit from everyone and their general experience. Now I want to focus on any kind of business adjustments, enhancements, or technology improvements that you've seen in your respective areas. So Aaron, I know you were just speaking so eloquently about what happened with disruptions in your business. Is there anything surprising that occurred, and how did you minimize the impact on your business operations based on all of the challenges?
Yeah, when it comes to surprising, I think I talked about this finite capacity problem for other manufacturers with just how many pieces of something that they can make, whether it's us with cables or, power supplies or anything else that's just in demand. But specifically, when you get down to the component level of those devices, we've never heard things like there's only so much plastic that's available. And in the last couple of months, the shortages are getting more serious and certainly more prolonged. And we're actually finding ourselves having to write bots to probe our competitors and to probe our suppliers' websites, so that in the event that they post supply on their website, we have bots written to take it, to automatically place orders. I've never seen that done in business before, and it's not a matter of cost, it's a matter of supply. And so having people on the technology side, writing these bots, looking for these components on a continuous basis globally, it is making a difference on how we get our components and how we source them. But it's just something that we've never even had to consider before. It's a whole new level of purchasing that's, unprecedented in our business.
Wow, that's really an unbelievable story. Thank you for sharing that. And obviously you're doing everything you can to figure out how to overcome your challenges and are using technology. So yep. Very interesting. All right, Abhishek. So you talked a bit about UPS and technology. So tell us about how UPS has used technology to improve the customer experience and what's next on the horizon.
Yeah, I think listening to Aaron definitely can relate to that, story that he's mentioning over there. So again, I mentioned that the capacity, this is a industry-wide problem that every one of us has been facing. So thinking about it, I think knowing where your shipments are has always been a challenge for people, and then UPS has been doing that systematically. But I think the last couple of years or so, where UPS has emphasized a lot of importance is showing to the customer where their stuff is, because that takes a little bit of that anxiety away of where is it going to come in 60 days, or now it's going to take longer. So anyways, when the supply chains get extended, every day counts. So I think for that, I think UPS has invested a lot of effort into providing the end-to-end supply chain visibility. We have platforms, just because we offer quite a breadth of services. The newest platform, the UPS side of it's called UPS Symphony, that actually attaches every single offering under the SCS side of the business, which includes forwarding, which includes logistics and distribution, as well as the truckload offerings that UPS does through the Coyote side of it. So when you know that from the start of a shipment coming from Asia Pacific to the distribution center in the US, where that shipment is, I think that kind of visibility is now possible, and UPS has worked internally as well as with some external partners to provide that visibility to it. So I think not that we have been able to shrunk that timeline, but we were able to actually provide that visibility to the customer with respect to, are there holds, Are there anything that could further delay that, and having that opportunity right in front of the customer to be able to see and use that information to plan accordingly? And I think the other area, because we realized that a lot of SMB customers were struggling because of manpower or because a lot of constraint, and a lot of them were doing the logistics themselves. It was easier to manage when things were moving smoothly, but in these time frames, they were all spending a lot of time on shipping and visibility and tracking. So we had UPS Forwarding Hub, which is one of the solutions that UPS provides, where you can actually do most of these things as a one-stop shop from one place, all digital, all online, to ship a air package or a air freight package shipment or an ocean shipment, see it, track it. So in instances like that, where we're trying to make it easier for our customers to be a little bit efficient with their time, know where their things are. And then also, I think the last one I would say is that probably the most important is stay informed, right? I mean, I think technology has been used very actively by UPS to change how UPS delivers information to its customers, not only from a shipment perspective, but overall environmental perspective. So we have done very actively, thought leadership events or just educational things about providing and letting customer know what is happening in the marketplace, where things are, and things constantly have been evolving, right? I mean, you think about something setting down, something else comes up, and now Russia, Ukraine, right? That's another example where we have provided some things to the customer. So I think in all three ways, technology has helped us, and we have in turn tried to help our customers by giving them the most relevant, updated information to keep their supply chains moving.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I know even for my own personal packages, you want to see where it is and when it will arrive. So that's only heightened when you're talking about a business move for a critical component like Aaron discussed. So ensuring that there's full visibility and knowledge of the journey and how the progress is going from end to end, so it will arrive on time, it is just table stakes, particularly now during the pandemic. So thank you, Abhishek. And Elliott, turning to you, have you seen any changes in the airline industry in terms of new technologies that emerged based on these challenges that we faced during the pandemic and the surge in the e-commerce and the supply chain disruptions, helping to respond more rapidly to the ups and downs in demand? And I would imagine this has opened up the door or potentially created opportunities for new technology.
Yeah. On the passenger side, there's always been use of technology, right? There's the ability to use the various apps to check in for your flights, to use it for boarding passes. And at the airport prior to COVID, we introduced facial recognition on the international side. You could check in on a kiosk using facial recognition, and you could board through security also using facial recognition for selected flights. Of course, you had to opt in to use it because some people didn't want to. So on the passenger side, there's been a tremendous amount of technology that was there before. It's now being used even more. So you see less physical paper boarding passes now. A lot of people board with their cell phones, a lot more than before, just because consciously people don't want to be touching things, and so you see that a lot more. There's a deeper penetration of that sort of technology now. On the cargo side, what we see is, so this airport in 2019, we introduced something called a cargo community system. It was a sort of similar to Abhishek's system, where you can track and trace your shipment, where typically in UPS and Amazon and so forth, they have what you call a closed loop system. But when you have a different freight forwarder with a different airline, different ground handler, transportation company, they tend not to want to communicate with each other about the same cargo. So we introduced a platform with a company called Kali Logistics out of Mumbai, where they could actually do that. They had full transparency on cargo. They could log into the system. They could tell how many pieces are there, whether or not they're damaged, whether or not they're ready for delivery. They could tell everything about a shipment. And the ground handler could therefore prepare the shipment ahead of time. Instead of having a stack of documents and going to a customer service desk, they can scan the QR code and get all the information on the shipment and show up on time when they have a reservation at a dock door of a warehouse and pick up or deliver the cargo. So that it's a tremendous, it seems simple for UPS, but for us, it's a big move because in cargo, outside of the courier service, we love paper. And it's very hard for us to get rid of having, I think I heard it was like about 80 747 of paper we use per year in cargo for just all the types of different shipments and stuff. So we're one of the first to do it. There are many other airports that are now getting used to using a cargo community system. It's difficult to get it penetrated into the market, to get the freight forwarders to use it and different stakeholders, but it's coming on stream, and a lot more as more airports sign up to it, more and more people are also signing up to it. We did this before COVID, and then when we had COVID, we realized, wait a minute, if the truckers no longer have to hold paper and pass it to a customer service rep, and we don't have to share and meet in the same room and so forth, we're actually creating an environment that's a lot safer for our agents or cargo people in the industry to work, where they can use technology to pass along information. They can pay using companies like PayCargo to pay for all the different fees on a payment platform that's inside of the cargo community system. So it really helps us a lot to reduce contagion, reduce the mingling of a lot of people together in one room. And we only kind of realized that during COVID, when we saw some people using it, and they were like, more people wanted to use it because they realized that it was a safer way to operate cargo. So that's one of the technology that we introduced before COVID, but really realized the benefit of it actually during COVID, beyond efficiencies. But we're pretty happy for that. I'm pretty proud of that one.
Yeah, it sounds like you had some great additional benefits, some sustainability benefits with people using their phones instead of printing out a paper ticket. And then same on the cargo side, and then also some benefits from the health standpoint and social distancing during the pandemic. So really interesting to see that this challenge created increased adoption and usage of some of your existing technologies. Yeah. Fascinating. So for the next round of questioning, I want to shift a little bit and focus more on the consumer impacts or your customer or your buyer impacts. So Elliott, I want to stay with you for a moment and have you talk to us a bit about the impact to the consumers in terms of availability and pricing, and what you saw as that kind of a challenge there.
Well, maybe I go backwards and talk about cargo first. On cargo, the prices went through the roof to move anything, anywhere. And it attracted a lot of, for the first time, I remember going to visit an EVA Airlines arrival in the middle of COVID during that summer. And it was a brand new 777 passenger plane. And the seats were covered with boxes and nets holding the boxes. And the first time I saw a Preta, which is a passenger plane covered with boxes on the seats, as well as boxes below the floor, in the belly. And it was phenomenal. It was weird, really weird, bizarre seeing this beautiful aircraft still with the new smell, with boxes covering the seats. But it showed that passenger airlines really needed to survive. And the one thing that was booming was cargo, and there was a shortage of cargo capacity, not mainly because many of the passenger airlines, and we forget passenger airlines carry a lot of cargo below the belly. And when a lot of these passenger airlines got grounded, it also grounded a lot of cargo capacity. So, and there weren't enough freighters to keep up with the demand. So a couple of airlines saw the ingenuity of it, and some actually took out seats and used the top, but others kind of left the seat in and continued to operate. So we saw a lot of innovations like that happening on the cargo side. And with prices, we think that prices will go down, but they won't go down to 2019 levels, because demand for cargo and movement of goods is still pretty high. One of the challenges for us as an airport, I mean, and both other speakers alluded to it, is that we get a lot of cargo that really should be on ships. Because of the congestion, because of the quarantine periods, because of the challenges that they're having on the oceans with some of these ships, we're getting a lot of them coming through air just to be able to get to companies like Aaron in time for their manufacturing line, because it costs more money for you to close your plant than to actually, you need to keep it going, even if you have to pay a premium price to move the product. So we recognize that we're not only an airport moving finished goods, we're moving goods for manufacturing, for aerospace and automotive and all the different companies and factories in this region. So we have to keep operations going, not just for us, but for our customers. On the passenger side, at first airfares were pretty low to try and get people to travel. They are going up. But it's understood because airlines really suffered a lot. Passenger airlines really suffered during COVID, and there are a few airlines that went bankrupt. Luckily, in the US, we don't have many of them, but internationally, there were a couple of airlines that went bankrupt, and still many that are in the red today. So, and if they weren't healthy during pre-COVID, then certainly they didn't survive COVID. So, we see more and more capacity, airlines going to different routes, looking at new cities. We had, for instance, Copa Airlines starting service to Atlanta in December of last year. So that we have a direct connection to Panama City, Panama, which gives us access to 22 other cities across Central and South America that we never had connections to before. These are cities that we just never had any flights to. So and this is during COVID. So you recognize that airlines are now looking for opportunities to expand, and we're out there talking to them and looking at opportunities where they can take advantage of these new changes, the new normal that we're always talking about, whatever that looks like for post-COVID or during COVID, or maybe we just live with COVID from now on.
Thank you, Elliott. I think what's permanently burned in my mind as an image is the boxes on the seats in the passenger aircraft. So I don't think I'll ever lose that image. So you described it so well. Really interesting to see how you were pivoting during those times.
Yeah.
So I want to turn to Aaron next. Aaron, I can't imagine what you're dealing with your buyers, your customers, your consumers, with these challenges where your supply chain challenges, movement of goods, and then the components. How did you talk through that and navigate that with your customers to keep their loyalty and return and repeat business?
Yeah, that's definitely been a challenge. We've had so many different projects going on where critical supplies have to be on time and available and working, and all these things have to come together at just the right time to keep different projects moving. And with the unknown around shipping, if it's an ocean container and you just don't know when it's going to hit the port, and there's nothing you can do about that at the moment. That's just stuff that's lost at the moment. So you're having to pivot and do more air freight or manufacture, do things on your own. When I think about things that are coming, a lot of it is about visibility. and being very transparent with companies so that they understand what you're experiencing and how it's going to impact them. Because like I said, there's a lot of components that are just finite numbers are available, and that really changes pricing quickly. And so we've had to actually introduce things, certain items are being introduced now into the market we've never done, like surge pricing, which is similar to, like, in past times, you'd see fuel surges from, air or regular cargo freight, and you'd see fuel surge prices. And now we're doing the same thing with chip prices. You're going to see surge pricing, or you might actually see the newest one that we're seeing now is something that we've never seen before, is really just market pricing. What is the market price of the product that you need on the day that it's going to ship? And, that is crazy in our world, in our little industry. No one's ever seen that before, but it's real, and we're dealing with it now because of the scarcity of the products that are available. And that's going to continue, I think, for the next 18 months, maybe even almost 2 years at certain levels, where these ideas of paying market price like you would for a lobster for a roll of cable could really be a real thing. And it's just strange, unusual, and all you can do is be honest and transparent about it, because it's a cost that has to be passed on. There's nothing you can do about it. Otherwise, you wouldn't make it.
Wow, that's really incredible. So basically dynamic pricing day to day for you.
In a lot of cases, yeah.
Well, Abhishek, I want to turn to you for some advice here for our panel speakers as well as the audience today. How can we navigate these challenges in this environment? What are some of the best practices you could share with us?
Yeah, I think historically the logistics been, considered as a cost center, right? I mean, a lot of companies, that's how it's been used. But I think what we are advising and requesting our customers is to do a better planning. I mean, I think it's by no means a done deal. There's a lot of data that's available, a lot of tools to kind of do some little bit of forecasting. And previously, if you always had plan A and plan B, now it's time to have A, B, and C, and have the flexibility to kind of be very nimble between those three. And that plan, when it's done, is not a plan that stays with the logistics department or the transportation group or that particular person. That gets communicated throughout the organization, from the employee who's actually doing it to all the way to the suppliers and the vendors, to make sure that everyone understands that where the planning process actually exists in part of it. And then communication for that plan, planning the plan and communication of the plan becomes very, very critical, very important, because as Elliott has said, as Aaron understands, these constraints are not going away anytime soon, right? I mean, the congestions at LA and Long Beach Port is still there. I mean, again, it's reduced, but still there. The new container ships are not going to be coming in the market unless next year. So that capacity is not returning to the marketplace, right? So being able to adjust to that and getting that visibility and communication in the organization is definitely important. Otherwise, people have different expectation, and then that does not get fulfilled, and then the customer gets frustrated about it. So I think that's definitely a big part of it. And then flexibility and agility, I think we talked about it. We can not emphasize how important it is to be able to use. I get it that you don't want to use less than container load or air freight for certain things like Aaron has mentioned. But I mean, if there is a need for it, and that is what is available, we have to kind of get our products moving. So that flexibility and nimbleness is important to get away from the mindset of, this moves via this mode. That mode congestion needs to go away. Things were not moving the way they were moving before, and that's the other part of it. And then also alternate solutions. I mean, Aaron indicated about domestic sourcing, right? A lot of people had their single sources in the APAC side of it. All the eggs were in one basket, and they were the ones that were hard hit. So I think having a scenario planning where you can identify alternate suppliers and then work and think about that supply chain. I mean, can Mexico or some other countries could be a viable source for these parts and logistics. So I think, just high level, these are a few things. And as I mentioned, we have tried to communicate that to our customer. There's some good, interesting articles that we have posted online that can be used as a guidepost depending on the circumstances. So definitely encourage people to kind of, go through those, or just, just be a little flexible.
Great words of advice. Be flexible, be nimble. The mode that you've traditionally used may not be the mode that you're going to use now or in the future. So be nimble about your modes. And then I think what I hear you saying is plan ahead, not just A and B, but A, B, and C, and think about nearshoring. So great advice, Abhishek. All right, so we're going to open it up from the engagement from our audience today. And we do have a question. This one is for you, Abhishek. So are you ready?
I am.
You're ready, good. All right, so COVID impact in terms of supply, workforce, revenue, etc., was felt by UPS worldwide. The way, were there some regions or countries that were worse hit than others?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I think about, the nightmare sometimes when I had about it, I think one that I had was definitely China, because it was very strict in their COVID policies, right? A few cases will emerge and they will shut down the entire port. So a few things happened in Ningbo, the entire port was shut down for a couple of days. I think that's just the extreme part of it, where some other countries did not take action at that severity level, right? I mean, the restrictions are quite rigorous sometimes, and that actually impacts our customers on a large magnitude part of it. So I think China definitely was an exception. A lot of things were moving from there, but having them put that kind of severe restrictions, even on the pilot sides of it, on testing and all, did not help moving things the right way. The other one, I would say US, right? The LA Long Beach port situation. I mean, no matter how much we tried to divert containers to the alternate ports, or even the carriers that try to call other ports, that is such a big, almost 50%, 40 to 50% of our capacity comes, or things come through that port. I think those were still very challenging from my side, my perspective, because it has a trickle effect. You don't move things, the containers sit over there, then carriers do blank sailing just to move containers from US to APAC. And that does not, I mean, there is plenty capacity in the marketplace for ocean containers. The problem is that the backlogs, as well as constrained, labor shortages, is taking 30% of the market capacity out of it. So you bring this thing to normal, the ocean containers already has a lot of capacity, but that takes time to move things around. So I think those two, I would definitely think, has been the primary challenge for me between APAC and US, and how things have turned out there.
Very interesting. Thank you, Abhishek. So this question is for Elliott. And so Elliott, you talked about the really surge in demand on the cargo side and the opposite on the passenger side of the business. So this question was asking about, hey, how did that work in terms of the balance? Did the cargo revenues surge so much that they made up for the shortfall in the passenger side? And how did that look for you in terms of revenue?
Well, two things. From the airline's perspective, it depends on the airline. Some airlines who very early caught on the idea and started to move cargo actually not only made their target, some of them surpassed their target even during COVID in terms of revenue. So a couple of airlines like Air Canada, United and stuff comes to mind, who actually surpassed their target, or at least made their target for 2020. And I'm not sure about 21, but so they did have a good compensation. Many others kind of airlines consider themselves mainly a passenger airline, and so they waited and have been waiting and have focused more on the return of passengers, and it's worked for them in the sense that there is a trend upwards for passengers. So they weren't profitable during COVID for sure, but they are coming back to profitability. From the airport's perspective, we make more revenue perhaps with passengers, because they travel through the airport, they shop, they eat at our food and beverage, more planes land and so forth. So we get more revenue from more people coming through the airport. For the cargo, we charge lease rent, and it's the same rent whether or not there's a surge or not in cargo. We are putting out opportunities to maybe change our structure so that we do charge a percentage of revenue or a percentage of take for some of the ground handlers, so that because we do promote the business and their business internationally. So we're looking at how we can change our cost structure in the future. So for us, it didn't make much difference that we had a surge in cargo and not so much in passenger, but for the airline, it depended on the airline.
Right. So I think, you're mentioning some interesting points that I think also tie into what we heard from Aaron and Abhishek, because, we're seeing surge pricing, or, you're thinking about changing your cost structure. So there's many things that are impacting probably the way we think about our cost structure, and then the way we charge for products or goods or services because of this, and this, quite imbalance going on. So yeah, I think there's a lot of revenue management activities going on throughout many industries based on what we're seeing with these supply chain disruptions. All right, so thank you, audience, for your questions. And I think we're going to head into our final lightning round. So looking beyond the pandemic, so let's steer our attention to the future past the pandemic. Looking ahead, what keeps you up at night globally, and what are you doing to move forward? Aaron, would you like to start to answer this question?
Sure, I'll give it a shot. So this morning I woke up to about 15 requests for our different customers about what's happening with Ukraine. And what I found interesting was how quickly these requests came in versus any time in the past where people were worried about the impact to our business should, a European country have another problem and create another supply chain issue. That has never really happened in the past, where people reacted so quickly to political news and all these things that's going on, from a global perspective. So that's certainly something that's interesting and new to try to react to. Additionally, I think that, when you look at these finite constraints on raw materials, it really is going down to a very low level of raw material production. So oil impacts plastics impacts everything, and all of these things are starting to really happen. And you combine a lot of different things together, the shift from combustion engine to electric vehicles, that's going to impact oil production and oil consumption, and that's going to change plastics costs. And all of these things start to really happen quickly, much more quickly than anybody's prepared to deal with, I think. So a lot of these stranger things coming together all at one time to really shift our entire industry to new materials, new ways of thinking, and new pricing structures really are challenging to keep up with at the moment, because we're really starting to see the impact of one industry impacting another at a much faster rate than we've ever seen before. So these are things that are hard to deal with on a global scale.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Ukraine, because we're definitely talking quite a lot about that at my company as well. So everyone, I think, has a heightened awareness to the supply chain and any impacts. So great point, Aaron. Abhishek, any thoughts from your side? What's keeping you up at night globally, and what are we going to do to move forward into the post-pandemic world?
Yeah, I think I'll definitely want to touch on a different aspect of it, which is people. And I think a lot of the supply chain professionals, the operators, the people who actually help handle and move the goods around are definitely been overworked for a long period of time. There's a lot of exertion in the industry. There's a lot of churn in the industry. I mean, the long hours, and they're not being subsiding. I think the problem is that this has been going on and anticipated to go on for another year and a half. When you talked about it. So I think having the right people, knowledgeable people who are actually helping companies like UPS do the right thing, maintain the service, maintain the reliability. Not having those people, I think, is definitely very tricky and very difficult to kind of comprehend in my mind, to think about it. And that thing trickles down eventually to the other parts of it. So having the right people and then being able to staff is definitely, being a manager, I mean, I think that's definitely bothers me a little bit. And as Aaron mentioned, I think the other part that frustrates me or actually worries me is that the constraint is everywhere. Like I mentioned before, that you could have, in the past, you could have used ocean to circumvent air, or air to circumvent ocean to a certain degree. I mean, those modes are different, but you could have actually done something to cope up with the situation. Right now, everything being constrained, the cargo freighters being at full capacity, even more, and then oceans completely that backlogged. I mean, the solutions are very difficult to come by. So you want to comfort your customer, you want to give them a solution. But I mean, I think this is the reality, and giving that, the truth is hard to swallow, right? I mean, that's what it is. I mean, you want to tell the customer that this is not going to move, right? I mean, that's the hardest part, for you to be able to go to a customer and then say, yeah, you know what, you want this, but unfortunately, no matter what we can do, these things are not going to happen the way you planned them to happen pre-COVID. So I think those are the few things I would say is that definitely, worries us being a logistics professional on how best to kind of do that. And I think customer experience, I would say, for our CEO, customer experience is key. I mean, Carol is a very big proponent of customer experience and the purpose that UPS has for it. So I think in that big, theme, it's important that we are fair and consistent in our messaging and what we think we tell our customer and deliver on it. So I think when you see situations where this might not happen, definitely bothers you, and then you want to do the most that you could. But that realistic expectation is needed in the people and in our customers' mind.
That's such a really insightful answer, Abhishek. You're thinking about the people and who power everything we do every day, and the customer experience. So definitely two things that keep everybody up at night. So great answer. I love hearing that. All right, last but not least, Elliott, what's keeping you up at night, and what do you see as the path moving forward?
I think any global instability is keeping me up at night. When we had Omicron surge and Delta surge, it creates a problem for us in that we see passenger flows fall, but we see cargo increase, and we see the resources in terms of staffing also fall. So it puts a lot of pressure, as Abhishek was saying, it puts a lot of pressure on the folks who are there working, making sure that they move our boxes, get them delivered to our front door every day. It puts a lot of pressure on these folks every time we have a surge of any kind of disease, and especially COVID. So what I hope to see is a lot better leadership. Abhishek talked about this, the idea of having leadership that recognizes the pressure that's in the industry, the value of the industry, and the need to just kind of do whatever we can to really help workers to be comfortable and to be satisfied with the jobs that they have. COVID has made a lot of people realize that life is extremely valuable, and we have to make the best of what we have to enjoy it, because you never know how long it's going to be. So many people are realizing it, including many of our workers, and we have to really treat them better. The other thing is, I always encourage the use of more technology where possible to enhance workers, to make their environment safer, but to also make them more efficient. The use of technology in warehouses, whether it's material handling systems or just the cargo community system that I mentioned earlier, whatever kind of technology there is to keep people safe, to enhance their efficiency, and also leadership that shows that truly we care about the people that are doing the work for us. That's vital for us to kind of move forward. So I think I would leave us with that.
Wonderful answer. Leadership needs to make sure we take care of the people. So love that perspective, Elliott. Thank you so much. Well, I think that's wrapping up our panel discussion today. Thank you everyone for attending, and thank you to our panelists. I'm going to hand it back over to Brian to close us out?
Great. I did have one last question. It looks like that came through, and I wanted to make sure we asked that. Thanks, Kristen Marshall, for asking that. And this is for Abhishek. They were asking, Abhishek, you mentioned utilizing communication channels. What digital channels were you using specifically, and what did you find being successful? So good question, Kristen.
Yeah, I think before COVID, right, we used to do live events and have people come over and then tell them what we are thinking about the industry, the overall market, and we realize that's not possible anymore. We realize the amount of time that people want to invest in it is limited. So what we did, we transformed some of those things online virtually. So we did virtual conferences, but not only we did them, we actually recorded them in nuggets, and then we actually started to post them, make them available to our participants, right? And they can actually view them as tutorials, right? As the latest and greatest that is available to them from our side of it, to see, listen, learn from it at their own time and own pace. And I think that helped a lot because people connect virtually, visually to these things and want to listen and then interpret these things. So that has happened, helped us a lot. And also, I think these days, technology-wise, the preferences people have is very different, right? They want to only know about air freight or ocean freight and which way the brokerage things are going. So I think we have done a good job at UPS to respect people's privacy. They can sign up for what they're interested in. And if we have subject matter expertise in that, then only we'll communicate to them. So we try to move a lot of our things live in terms of videos, in terms of small tutorials which were recorded so that people can actually listen and interpret it their own way rather than long PDF files and all of that. Those are the days. I mean, I think we shy away from all of that stuff. We try to do a lot more interactive, record things and then let people use them at their own own spare time and at their own will. So that's what I would think has been the latest move from us in the world of Zoom and then online conferences and all of them. The video is where the customer wants to be.
Great. No, that's fantastic. So always thinking ahead. No, certainly appreciate that additional feedback, Abhishek. And yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for attending today. I think this has been a fantastic discussion. So a lot of insights shared across the board. And so thanks, Elliott, Aaron, Abhishek, and Kelly for certainly participating in the event today. I think it's gone over very well. So thanks again. And also wanted to thank our sponsors. Once again, UPS, Fraser and Dieter, and Morgan and Stanley. So thanks to all of our sponsors for sponsoring today's event. So I'll give everyone back some free time here, right, toward the end of the day. So to get your evening started, but unless anyone has any other questions, again, certainly appreciate everyone attending and all the panelists and Kelly for moderating. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.